Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're talking about one of the most dramatic moments in the ongoing war between Russia and Ukraine, the Ukrainian strike that set Russia's lifeline to Crimea in flames. This wasn't just a military attack, it was a message, a symbol, and a bold move that shook the very foundation of Russia's control over the Crimean Peninsula. The connection between Russia and Crimea has always been more than just geography. It represents power, control, and access. Since 2014, when Russia annexed Crimea, Moscow has relied heavily on this link to supply its forces, move resources, and maintain its occupation. The Crimean Bridge, also known as the Kerch Bridge, became the centerpiece of that connection. Stretching almost 19 kilometers across the Kerch Strait, it linked mainland Russia with the peninsula, carrying both rail and road traffic. For Russia, it was a symbol of triumph. For Ukraine, it was a target waiting for the right moment. When the strike happened, the world's attention immediately turned to Crimea. The explosion ripped through the calm early morning hours, sending plumes of fire and smoke into the air. Ukrainian sources claimed responsibility, saying the operation was planned carefully to target one of the bridge's underwater support structures. It wasn't a random explosion. It was a surgical strike, designed to cripple movement and send a clear message to Moscow that Ukraine could hit even the most heavily guarded targets. The immediate impact was enormous. Traffic across the bridge stopped. Russian authorities scrambled to control the situation, closing the bridge and redirecting all movement. For several hours, the link between Russia and Crimea was completely severed. On social media, videos showed long lines of vehicles backed up for kilometers, while military convoys were forced to find alternate routes. This disruption might sound temporary, but in a war zone, even short delays can create serious logistical chaos. For Ukraine, this strike was part of a bigger strategy. Over the past year, Ukrainian forces have been systematically targeting Russia's logistics, fuel depots, and transportation routes. The goal is simple: make it harder for Russia to sustain its invasion. Every supply train delayed, every bridge damaged, and every convoy rerouted means more pressure on the Russian front lines. Hitting the Kerch Bridge wasn't just about destruction, it was about control. It showed that Ukraine could dictate the pace of war by attacking the arteries that feed Russia's military machine. The symbolism of this attack cannot be overstated. The Kerch Bridge wasn't just an engineering project, it was a personal achievement for Vladimir Putin. He personally inaugurated the bridge in 2018, driving a truck across it in a public display of pride and dominance. Damaging it, therefore, isn't only a blow to Russian logistics, it's a blow to Putin's image. It challenges the idea that Crimea is safely under Russian control and exposes vulnerabilities that Moscow has tried hard to hide. Russian media quickly rushed to downplay the incident. Official statements described it as a localized incident and claimed repairs were already underway, but satellite images and reports from Crimea told a different story. Sections of the bridge showed visible damage, and repairs were expected to take weeks, if not months. While Russia may have reopened one lane to civilian traffic soon after, heavy military movement was restricted. That restriction alone represents a major setback for Russia's logistics in southern Ukraine. For Ukraine, the operation was more than just tactical. It was psychological warfare. Every successful strike deep inside Russian-held territory boosts Ukrainian morale and reminds both sides that Russia's dominance is not absolute. The fact that Ukraine could carry out such a precise and effective operation speaks volumes about its growing capabilities, especially in intelligence, planning, and the use of advanced technology like underwater drones and explosives. Meanwhile, for Russia, this event forced a reevaluation of security measures around key infrastructure. After the explosion, additional troops and naval patrols were deployed in the Kerch Strait. Defense systems were reinforced, and the Russian military vowed to improve surveillance in the area. But despite those actions, the psychological impact remains. If Ukraine could strike the bridge once, it could do it again. Beyond the immediate destruction, the strike exposed a deeper vulnerability. Russia's supply routes into Crimea are limited. The bridge was the most direct and efficient one, but it's not the only way. When it's down, Russia has to rely on alternative routes, such as ferries across the Kerch Strait or land routes through occupied southern Ukraine. However, these options are slower, riskier, and more exposed to Ukrainian attacks. Each detour increases the time it takes to move fuel, ammunition, and food, which directly affects operations on the front lines. Reports from Crimea after the attack also described rising tension among civilians. Fuel shortages began appearing almost immediately. Long lines formed at gas stations, and prices skyrocketed. Residents started to worry about how supplies would reach the peninsula if the bridge remained closed. These shortages weren't just an inconvenience. They were a reminder that the war is closing in on what Russia once claimed was permanently its territory. On social media, the reactions were mixed. Ukrainians celebrated the operation as a moment of justice for the annexation of Crimea and the years of war that followed. Russian bloggers and commentators, however, were furious. Some blamed the military for failing to protect the bridge. Others demanded harsher retaliation against Ukraine. The divide reflected the growing frustration within Russia about the war's direction. Every successful Ukrainian strike increases pressure on the Kremlin to respond. Yet each response risks further escalation. Strategically, this attack fits into Ukraine's ongoing campaign to stretch Russian defenses thin. Instead of direct, large-scale assaults, Ukraine has focused on hitting vital targets across a wide area. Airfields, ammunition depots, oil refineries, and now major bridges. This approach weakens Russia's ability to move resources efficiently, forcing it to defend multiple points at once. It's a war of attrition fought through logistics and precision rather than sheer manpower. Western analysts have called the Kerch Bridge strike one of Ukraine's most daring and technically complex operations to date. It demonstrates how far Ukraine's intelligence and special forces have come since the early days of the war. Planning such a mission requires extensive reconnaissance, engineering expertise, and secrecy. The timing, the placement of explosives, and the coordination all point to meticulous execution. For Ukraine, each success, full high-value strike builds confidence, both at home and among its international allies. For Russia, however, the challenges keep mounting. Every time the bridge is attacked, it becomes more expensive to maintain and more difficult to defend. Continuous repairs drain resources that could otherwise be used at the front. In the long term, this weakens Russia's ability to sustain prolonged operations. It also hurts morale among troops stationed in Crimea, who now face uncertainty about whether reinforcements or supplies will arrive on time. The political implications are just as significant. Putin has built much of his domestic narrative around the idea of restoring Russia's greatness and protecting Crimea. Every successful Ukrainian strike undermines that narrative. When the bridge burns, it's not just infrastructure that's damaged. It's the perception of control, strength, and inevitability. Russian state media can try to downplay the damage, but images of the burning bridge spread instantly online, eroding trust and confidence among ordinary Russians. Ukraine, on the other hand, has used the event to strengthen its diplomatic position. It showcases its resilience and innovation to Western partners, reinforcing the argument that continued support in weapons, funding, and intelligence is producing real results. Each successful strike validates Ukraine's strategy and encourages allies to maintain their backing. In Crimea itself, the situation has grown increasingly tense. Residents report military checkpoints becoming stricter, more police patrols on the streets, and growing anxiety about future attacks. The sense of safety that Russia promised when it annexed the peninsula has all but vanished. What once seemed like a secure part of Russia's territory is now a frontline target. Economically, the damage to the bridge also carries long-term consequences. The Kerch Bridge isn't just used for military transport, it's vital for trade and tourism. Disruptions affect businesses, transport companies, and families who depend on that route for everyday needs. Repairing it costs billions of rubles, money that Russia can hardly spare amid sanctions and the ongoing drain of the war. Internationally, reactions have been divided but telling. Western nations largely praised Ukraine's right to defend itself and strike military targets aiding the occupation. Russia condemned the attack as terrorism and promised retaliation. However, despite loud threats, Russia's ability to respond effectively is limited. It can launch missile strikes, But that only deepens global condemnation and further isolates Moscow diplomatically. The strike also shows how modern warfare is evolving. This isn't just about tanks and soldiers anymore. It's about precision, intelligence, and the ability to disrupt. Infrastructure warfare, targeting the systems that keep armies moving, is becoming a defining feature of the conflict. Ukraine has embraced this approach, turning its limited resources into strategic advantages by focusing on high-value targets that create cascading effects. In the aftermath, the question remains, what happens next? Russia will undoubtedly repair the bridge, as it has before. But every repair takes time, resources, and effort. And with each new strike, the bridge becomes a little less reliable. For Ukraine, the message is clear. No matter how much Russia invests in symbols of control, they can be burned, broken, or destroyed. As the war drags on, such attacks may shape the future of Crimea itself. If Russia cannot reliably supply the peninsula, its hold on it weakens. Over time, that could open political and military opportunities for Ukraine to reclaim more territory or negotiate from a stronger position. The burning bridge, therefore, is more than just an image of destruction, it's a symbol of shifting power. For now, the strike has once again reminded the world that the conflict is far from over. It has shown that despite immense pressure, Ukraine continues to innovate, adapt, and fight back. Russia's lifeline to Crimea may be repaired, but the damage, both physical and psychological, will linger. Every explosion, every disruption, and every symbol of resistance keeps the war alive in global consciousness. Thank you all for watching and staying informed. If you enjoyed this analysis, don't forget to like the video, share it with others who follow world events, and subscribe for more deep dives into the stories shaping our world. Stay tuned for more updates and insights as the situation continues to unfold.